Have you ever loved someone so deeply, only to later wonder if they were slowly unraveling you, thread by silent thread? It's a haunting realization, not the stormy kind that rips through your life in one dramatic night, but the quiet kind. The type that whispers doubts when the room is silent, that makes your laughter feel thinner and your confidence slowly shrink in the mirror. You ask yourself, what happened to me? And the answer isn't obvious, because the pain wasn't loud. It was intimate, subtle, deep. In a world that tells us to chase chemistry, we rarely pause to question its cost. We romanticize passion, but often overlook the poison hiding in charm. We cling to potential, but ignore the weight of patterns. And worst of all, we silence our instincts, even when they scream in the language of discomfort and confusion. The Stoics, centuries before dating apps and modern confusion, already understood this, that peace in a relationship isn't accidental. It is earned through discernment, through clarity, through the courage to walk away from what sparkles but does not sustain. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts." I'd add, on the quality of the person you choose to share your most vulnerable thoughts with. This video is not about judgment. It's not a manifesto against women or men. It's about wisdom. It's about recognizing when someone doesn't just fail to nurture your soul, but feeds on it. This is a guide for anyone, man or woman, who's tired of mistaking chaos for love, who's done confusing intensity with connection, who's ready to choose peace over drama, truth over illusion, and strength over sentimentality. Today, we walk into the quiet corners of relationships, the ones most people are afraid to illuminate. We'll meet 7 kinds of people. They won't all look dangerous. Some are wrapped in elegance, in sweetness, even in vulnerability. But what they all have in common is this: they drain you while convincing you to pour more. If you've ever doubted yourself in love, if you've ever felt the loneliness of being together with the wrong person, this is for you. And if this message stirs something in you, if it feels like clarity or a quiet truth you've long needed to hear, please consider liking this video, subscribing to Stoic Now, and joining a community where ancient wisdom meets modern healing. Now take a breath. Let's begin. Number 1, the chronic victim. There's a type of sorrow that doesn't seek healing. It seeks an audience. You meet her, and at first, you're pulled in, not by glamour, not by games, but by gravity. She tells her stories with an openness that feels raw, even sacred. Childhood wounds, betrayed friendships, lovers who didn't understand her, employers who mistreated her, friends who turned cold. Her life, as she tells it, is a tapestry of injustice. And you, sitting across from her, begin to feel like maybe you were sent to be the one thing that finally goes right. It feels noble, even heroic. You're not just falling in love. You're rescuing, redeeming, rewriting history. But beneath that story is a subtle truth that too few recognize before it's too late. She is always the victim. Always. The pattern doesn't take long to show itself. If your eyes are clear, every conflict is someone else's fault. Every setback, the result of another's malice. And slowly, her past becomes your present. The emotional weight she once carried alone now finds its place on your shoulders. You begin to shrink so she can feel larger. You begin to apologize just to keep the peace. You begin to explain her anger to yourself, excuse her silence, justify her dismissals. This isn't partnership. This is quiet erosion. And yet, it's incredibly hard to walk away from. Why? Because the role she casts you in isn't just partner, it's savior. And when someone sees you as their last chance at happiness, their lifeline to safety, leaving begins to feel like betrayal. Epictetus warned us, it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. When you're caught in this web, your judgment begins to blur. You no longer see patterns, you see wounds. You don't hear manipulation, you hear pain. You start believing that love means endurance, that compassion means silence, that being strong means carrying the emotional aftermath of someone else's past. But here's what Stoic clarity demands: the ability to separate compassion from self-destruction. You are not cruel for setting boundaries. You are not cold for needing space. And you are not unloving for refusing to carry a weight that was never yours to hold. The chronic victim doesn't just refuse accountability. She demands that you relinquish yours. You stop questioning her behavior because questioning sounds like blaming. You stop asking for your needs to be met because she's been through so much. Your strength becomes something to be extracted, not cherished. And perhaps most dangerously, your identity begins to shift. I knew a man, let's call him Daniel. Strong, composed, deeply grounded in his work and values. After a divorce, he met someone who seemed refreshingly open. She told him everything, how no one ever stayed, how she was always misunderstood. He admired her vulnerability. It felt like intimacy, but slowly, her pain became his prison. Anytime he brought up an issue, it turned back on him. If he asked for space, he was abandoning her. If he expressed frustration, he was just like the others. What started as love turned into quiet compliance. He began second-guessing his words, apologizing for things he didn't do, avoiding conflict not because he feared anger, but because he feared breaking her. But it was never his job to protect someone from the truth of their own patterns. Seneca once said, "A man is as unhappy as he has convinced himself he is." The chronic victim, then, is not just someone who believes they've been wronged. It's someone who refuses to imagine a life beyond being wronged. And if you tether your identity to theirs, you too become ensnared in that same endless loop of blame, guilt, and quiet defeat. So how do you know? Pay attention to how often you feel you must filter yourself, how often you bite your tongue to avoid triggering a spiral. Watch for the patterns. Every ex was abusive, every boss unfair, every friendship a betrayal. If she's never held a mirror to herself, you will become the mirror she breaks every time she doesn't like her reflection. And here's the most important truth. Relationships don't just shape your days. They shape your mind. If you are constantly in a dynamic where you are the stabilizer, the fixer, the one who absorbs the damage, you will slowly forget what it feels like to be seen as whole. You will start calling imbalance normal. You'll confuse quiet resentment with commitment. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. But I'd go further. The soul becomes dyed with the people it surrounds itself with. You deserve love that strengthens your clarity, not clouds it. A partner who seeks growth, not pity. Someone who owns their past, not weaponizes it. Because no matter how compelling the story is, if you're always cast as the villain the moment you speak your truth, you're not in a love story. You're in a performance. And no amount of love can heal someone who refuses to look inward. No amount of support can fill the void that only self-awareness can mend. You are not her past. You are not her therapist. You are not the apology the world never gave her. You are allowed to choose peace over pity. You are allowed to walk away, not with anger, but with clarity. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do, for both of you, is to leave the stage before the next act begins. Number 2, the manipulative charmer. People walk into your life like a season you've been waiting for. Their voice, their touch, even their presence, feels like relief. Like warmth in winter. Like breath after drowning. They don't just see you, they study you. And when they speak, it feels like someone finally read the book of your soul. You fall, not because you're foolish, but because the illusion is masterfully crafted. Precision, timing, sincerity, all simulated to feel real. She listens like no one else did. Laughs at your humor as if it's rare gold. And every moment with her feels just slightly elevated. Like real life, but airbrushed. What you don't realize, at least not yet, is that you're not falling in love with a person. You're falling into a structure. A script. A role you were assigned the moment she saw your strength and decided she could bend it. This is the manipulative charmer. And her most dangerous weapon is not cruelty, but charisma. Epictetus warned us. Be not deceived by the softness of a voice or the sweetness of a word. Truth lives in deeds. That's the Stoic key. Action, not appearance. Reality, not romance. You see, manipulation rarely enters the room wearing a villain's cape. It arrives in elegance. It complements your virtues. It flatters your character. And in doing so, it disarms your discernment. At first, you'll feel more confident around her. She uplifts, affirms, reflects your best qualities back at you like a mirror designed to flatter. But slowly, subtly, you'll notice how her praise comes with direction. You feel encouraged when you're compliant, admired when you serve her narrative, supported so long as you make no sudden movements. And then it shifts. She still smiles, but the eyes tighten. The charm doesn't leave, it just turns colder, calculated. She doesn't argue outright. Instead, she starts asking more questions. Why would you say that? Why didn't you consult me first? Do you even care about how this affects us? And every time you push back, she makes you feel like you're breaking something sacred. Here's where many lose themselves. You start doubting your instincts. After all, she's not cruel. She hasn't yelled. There's no overt insult. So why do you feel small? Why does your voice tremble a little more when you speak your truth? Because charm, when wielded with self-interest, is a form of psychological hypnosis. Seneca once said, "He who is feared also fears." The manipulative charmer may appear poised, but she is deeply afraid of losing control. And her charm is not affection. It's armor. It's architecture designed to keep her in control of the emotional environment. The relationship becomes a house where you are welcome, so long as you never move the furniture. I once spoke with a man named Colin. Strong, accomplished, emotionally intelligent. He met a woman who lit up every room she entered. People adored her. She was gracious, magnetic. And to Colin, she felt like grace personified. For the first year, it was harmony. Passionate, peaceful, persuasive. But when Colin began making decisions she didn't agree with, the air shifted. He didn't notice it at first. Just a longer silence here, a gentle withdrawal there. And then came the guilt. Not rage, not rejection, just disappointment. And that disappointment, softly wielded, was more cutting than any harsh word. She would say things like, "I thought we were on the same path," or "I just never imagined you'd shut me out like this." Words designed not to hurt directly, but to make you self-police. And it worked. Colin became quieter, more agreeable, less himself. That's the tragedy of the manipulative charmer. They don't chain you. They make you forge your own chains. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. For I seek the truth." But you can only seek the truth when you're not being conditioned to fear your own clarity. When manipulation is wrapped in charm, you begin to doubt what's real. But here's the test. Does this person celebrate your independence or only your compliance? Do they cheer for your growth or only when it fits their script? A healthy partner supports your expansion, even when it means growing in directions they didn't plan for. The manipulative charmer, however, views your autonomy as a threat. They want your growth, but only if they get to claim authorship. And the most dangerous part? The world may never believe you, because she is so good, so poised, so believable. So how do you protect yourself? You come back to your inner compass. You remember what Marcus taught. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Surround yourself with distortion, and your thoughts will twist. Surround yourself with truth, and they will clarify. Ask yourself daily, do I feel more myself around this person, or less? Do I expand, or do I shrink? If your truth feels like a threat to your partner, then you are not loved. You are managed. And love, real love, is never about management. It is about freedom. It's about presence. It's about being seen without strings and supported without scripts. The manipulative charmer may be beautiful, poised, admired by many. But remember, not every rose offers fragrance. Some conceal thorns sharp enough to draw blood, just slowly enough for you not to notice. You deserve love without performance, connection without manipulation, affection that liberates, not enchants. Because no matter how captivating the role, you were never meant to be someone's character. You were born to be whole. Number 3, the emotionally unavailable. Some people are like beautiful houses with the lights on, but no one home. They say all the right things. Show up for birthdays. Smile in photos. Share meals. Hold your hand. Sleep beside you. But somehow, in the moments that truly matter, in the silence, in the struggle, in the sacred pause where two souls are meant to meet, they disappear. Not physically, emotionally. They vanish behind busyness, behind sarcasm, behind vague phrases like, "I'm just tired," or "it's nothing." And you learn, over time, to stop asking questions you know won't be answered, to stop knocking on doors that never open. You begin to shrink your needs, dilute your desires, and praise their presence, even though it's hollow. This is what it means to be with someone emotionally unavailable. You are never fully alone, but you are never truly met, either. The Stoics knew this emptiness well. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." But when you live next to a partner who guards their inner world like a fortress, your thoughts begin to spiral. You begin to question your own worth, your own reality. You ask, am I too much? Am I expecting too much? Maybe I'm just hard to love. But this is not love. This is proximity without intimacy, motion without meaning. And the deeper pain? It often doesn't start this way. She was probably engaging, even radiant in the beginning, open enough to let you in just far enough to imagine the rest. You saw glimpses of emotional depth, her passion for music, her empathy for a wounded pet, the tears she cried during that one movie. You told yourself, it's in there. She just needs time, safety, patience. So you waited. You poured. You built emotional scaffolding on a foundation she never agreed to share. You did the work for two, hoping one day she'd match your effort. But she didn't. Because emotional unavailability isn't about capacity. It's about willingness. I remember a man, let's call him Adrian, who met a woman that seemed perfect on paper. Educated, kind, composed. They traveled together, had deep conversations, at least that's what he thought. But over time, those conversations became one-sided. He'd share his fears, his past, his hopes for the future. She'd nod, smile, and change the subject. Or offer a joke. Or worse, dismiss it as overthinking. Adrian didn't leave, not at first. Because nothing was wrong, exactly. No cheating, no shouting, no betrayals. Just distance. Invisible, but constant. A gap between hearts that never quite closed. That's the cruelest part of this dynamic. The absence of something you can't prove is missing. And so you start compensating. You become the emotional leader, the initiator, the planner, the fixer. You speak more than you listen, not out of ego, but out of survival. Because if you don't keep the energy moving, it all just stalls. But still, your deeper needs go unmet. You're not asking for perfection, just connection. And that request begins to feel like a burden. Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." And oh, how often we waste years in relationships hoping for emotional depth from someone who refuses to dig. Because the emotionally unavailable are not cold. They are protected, fortified, and often deeply afraid. Somewhere in their past, they decided vulnerability was too costly. So they shut the gates, smiled from behind the walls, and learned to love only in doses that didn't require them to feel too much. They want closeness, but without the risk. Comfort, but without the cost. And you, if you are empathetic, open-hearted, and resilient, you become the perfect partner for their avoidance. Because you make excuses. You say, they've been hurt. They just need time. They're trying. And maybe they are. But love is not built on potential. It's built on reciprocity. And this is where Stoicism becomes not just philosophy, but refuge. Epictetus taught, don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do, and you will go on well. In other words, accept reality without illusion. The emotionally unavailable are not villains. They are simply not ready. And readiness is not your job to inspire. It is their journey to take. So what do? You stop performing. You stop chasing connection like it's a prize to be earned. You sit still, look at the dynamic for what it is, and ask the hardest question, does this love expand me or shrink me? And if the answer is the latter, you walk. Not with anger, not with drama, with dignity. You remind yourself that love isn't proven by endurance. It's proven by presence. That connection is not created by proximity, but by shared vulnerability. And you remind yourself of this. You are not hard to love. You are just not meant to beg for something sacred. You deserve a partner who doesn't just hear your heart, but meets you there. Who doesn't just show up in body, but in spirit. Who doesn't disappear when the conversation turns deep or the nights get quiet. Because love isn't something that should leave you questioning your worth. It should affirm it. And the next time someone pulls away when things get real, remember, their retreat is not a reflection of your value, but a revelation of their limits. Walk forward, not bitter, but free. And trust that where there is emotional depth, there is also room for your whole self. Number 4, the eternal critic. You meet her, and she's sharp, intellectually alive, articulate, attentive. She notices the details, the things others miss. The curl in your voice when you talk about your dreams. The uneven way you smile when you're nervous. At first, it feels like intimacy, like someone finally sees you with precision. But soon, that precision becomes a blade. She comments on how you chew, how you dress, how your laugh is too loud, your silence too heavy, your decisions too impulsive. What once felt like attention now feels like evaluation. You begin editing yourself, not to grow, but to avoid disapproval. This is the eternal critic, not a partner, but a judge disguised as a lover. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change. For I seek the truth, by which no one was ever truly harmed." But there's a difference between truth spoken with love and constant correction spoken with contempt. The critic doesn't aim to help you grow. She aims to make herself the standard. You'll start to hear certain phrases, always subtle, always wrapped in civility. "I'm just being honest. I only say this because I care. If I don't tell you, who will?" And each time, you swallow the sting. You tell yourself she's just opinionated, that it's good to be challenged, that maybe this is what growth looks like. But growth doesn't feel like quiet humiliation. It doesn't make you walk on eggshells in your own life. You stop wearing what you love because she mocks it. You hesitate before sharing an idea because she'll dissect it. You begin over-explaining yourself, not because you're unclear, but because you're afraid she'll twist your words. I once knew a man named Jordan, charismatic, thoughtful, quietly ambitious. He fell for a woman who was brilliant, truly. She challenged him intellectually, kept him sharp. But over time, her challenges turned into condescension. Every choice he made was met with, "You sure that's wise?" Every success with, "Well, let's see how long that lasts." At dinner, she'd correct his facts mid-sentence. In front of others. At home, she'd ask rhetorical questions meant to belittle. "Do you really think that's the best you can do? Why can't you just think things through like I do?" And slowly, Jordan began to fade. Not because he lacked strength, but because he kept trying to prove himself to someone who had already made up their mind. Someone who didn't want a partner, but a project, a student, a subordinate. This is the damage the eternal critic causes, not through overt abuse, but through constant erosion. Your identity doesn't break all at once. It dissolves, and the world will never see it. Because she's supportive, smart, honest, the kind of woman people praise for keeping it real. They don't hear the edge in her compliments, the smirk behind her feedback. They don't see the way she rewrites your wins into warnings. Stoicism reminds us to guard our inner citadel, to protect the mind from being ruled by others' opinions. But when love is your entry point, when the critique comes from someone you trusted with your soul, that guard drops. And what enters is not just their voice. It becomes your own. You start hearing her when she's not there, doubting yourself before she even speaks, bracing for disappointment in every decision you make. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And nowhere is this more true than in the mind of someone who has internalized their partner's critique. Because now, she doesn't even have to say it. You say it for her. So how do you know when it's become too much? When praise feels conditional. When laughter feels cautious. When you rehearse your words like you're preparing for a cross-examination, not a conversation. When love starts to feel like an exam you're always failing. And here's the hardest truth. She may not even know she's doing it. The eternal critic often sees herself as the realist, the anchor, the truth-teller in a world full of fluff. But intention does not cancel impact. Just because someone doesn't mean to hurt you, doesn't mean you aren't bleeding. So what do? You reclaim your voice. You remember what Marcus Aurelius told himself. Never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect. If being with her means losing your clarity, your softness, your joy, then what you're calling love is actually fear wearing perfume. You don't need a partner who edits you. You need one who elevates you. Not by fixing you, but by reflecting back the parts of you you're proud to carry. True love is not a constant correction. It's an expansion. It's space to breathe, to stumble, to learn, without ridicule. So if her voice makes you smaller, if her love feels like a syllabus, if her care comes only through critique, then step back. Not to hurt her, but to remember yourself. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say isn't, "I'll do better." It's, "This is enough." Number 5, the resentful competitor. At first, it feels like partnership. She claps the loudest when you win, tells you how proud she is when you grow, even jokes about being your number one fan. And maybe, for a while, you believe it. But then, Slowly, quietly, something shifts. Your victories begin to echo differently in the room. A slight tension when you talk about your progress. A faint smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. You catch her scrolling her phone during your most passionate stories. She forgets to ask how the meeting went. She says, "You think you're better than everyone now." But it's dressed up as a joke. It's subtle, but real. And one day, you realize something unspoken is present between you. Not admiration, not pride, but competition. The ancient Stoics taught us that the wise man does not measure himself against others. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Because growth is not a show. It's an inward expansion. But what happens when the person you love most sees your growth not as inspiration, but as intimidation? The resentful competitor is rarely open about her envy. That would require vulnerability. Instead, she frames her resentment as sarcasm, detachment, or passive support. She'll say things like, "Must be nice," or "Some of us don't have time for that." She'll mock what matters to you, your new habits, your evolving values, your pursuit of something greater. And it's not because she's cruel. It's because she's afraid. Afraid of being left behind. Afraid of being outshone. Afraid that your expansion is proof of her stagnation. But that fear, left unacknowledged, breeds bitterness. And in time, that bitterness becomes a quiet war within the relationship. I remember a man named Ellis. Gentle soul, ambitious mind. He'd spent years in survival mode, working jobs he didn't love just to get by. When he finally got an opportunity that matched his talent, he was overjoyed. He dove into his work, found mentors, stayed up reading, learning, building. And his partner? At first, she celebrated. She toasted with him. She told friends, "He's finally doing what he was meant to." But then, the energy shifted. She began making cutting remarks about his new routines. "You've changed. You care more about success than us. Why do you need to impress everyone now?" Ellis tried to include her, asked her about her dreams, supported her pursuits. But she didn't want elevation. She wanted equilibrium. And not the kind that lifts both people, but the kind that stays comfortable. Eventually, he realized something heartbreaking. Every time he rose, she felt smaller. Not because he made her feel that way, but because she didn't want to rise with him. This is the quiet death of many relationships. Not from conflict, but from incompatibility and growth. The Stoics taught us to let go of things not in our control. And one thing we can never control is someone else's willingness to evolve. If your joy makes her insecure, if your progress makes her distant, if your light makes her reach for the dimmer, then you are not in love. You are in a rivalry, and love cannot survive there. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." In this context, the wisdom is clear. When met with envy, don't respond with shrinking. Don't dull your brilliance to maintain the peace. That's not peace, it's self-betrayal. A true partner celebrates your growth, even when it reveals where they've neglected their own. A true partner sees your evolution not as a threat, but as a mirror, an invitation. And yes, it can be hard. Growth changes the dynamic. It tests the connection. It challenges the comfort. But love, real love, adjusts, adapts, rises with you. The resentful competitor does not rise. She stays, stands, stares, and waits for you to descend. Because only in your shrinking does she feel secure. So how do you protect your path? With boundaries, with presence, with the quiet courage to ask, do I feel celebrated or tolerated? Do I feel expanded or managed? And if the answers hurt, don't look away. Because clarity, no matter how painful, is always kinder than self-deception. Seneca said, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you." That includes who you love, who you let into your intimate, sacred space. If you feel you must hide your goals, mute your ambition, or apologize for your joy, that is not love. That is emotional containment. And eventually, it will cost you everything. Because here's the truth the Stoics knew well: resentment is not passive. It is corrosive. And in a relationship, it will rot the foundation from the inside out. You are not obligated to make yourself small for someone else's comfort. You are allowed to grow, to thrive, to become, even if that means outgrowing the person beside you. Number 6, the unanchored dreamer. There's a kind of beauty in someone who dreams. Their eyes light up at the mention of possibility. Their voice softens when they talk about what could be. It feels like standing in the sun after a long winter, warm, bright, full of hope. At first, it's magnetic. This woman who dreams out loud, who wants to build a life that's different, bigger, free. She talks about moving to a cabin in the woods, starting a business that changes lives, writing a book that shifts the culture. And you, being the grounded soul that you are, you're captivated. Not because you're naive, but because part of you wants to believe, too. But time has a way of revealing the difference between a vision and an escape. And slowly, you start to notice the dreams never move beyond the dreaming. They stay ideas, fantasies, abstract sketches drawn on the air. There are no blueprints, no timelines, no action, only stories. The Stoics taught us to value action over appearance. Don't explain your philosophy, Epictetus said. Embody it. And that's where the unanchored dreamer falters. She explains beautifully, but she never becomes. She lives in future tense, in someday, in when things are finally aligned. But nothing ever aligns. Because she's not waiting for the right time, she's avoiding the present altogether. You begin to feel like the earth to her clouds. Stable, predictable, safe, but also a little invisible, a little boring. You become the placeholder, the support beam that allows her to float. And she does float, high, often eloquent, full of wonder, but never willing to land. It's romantic, until it becomes exhausting. You'll plan, she'll dream, you'll execute, she'll imagine. And after a while, the imbalance becomes undeniable. You're carrying the weight of two lives, two sets of responsibilities, two realities, one grounded, one constantly just out of reach. I once met a man named Kalen, engineer by trade, dreamer at heart, but disciplined in how he lived. He met a woman who was full of life, a painter, a poet, a storm of color in a gray world. He admired her, fell for her, and believed that with time, she'd harness that magic into something real. But she didn't. She bounced from job to job, started projects but never finished, borrowed money with big promises, always on the edge of something great, but never stepping fully in. Kalen, being the steady one, kept adjusting. He paid her rent when gigs fell through, encouraged her every idea, supported her when she just needed more space to create. But months turned to years, and the cycle stayed the same. He wasn't building a life with a partner. He was subsidizing someone else's fantasy. And the deeper tragedy? He stopped dreaming for himself. He was too busy making hers feel real. Seneca once wrote, "Life is long if you know how to use it." The unanchored dreamer wastes time not by resting, but by wandering endlessly in uncommitted ambition. And if you're not careful, you'll get caught in the drift. Because it's not just about ambition. It's about accountability. And here's the hard truth. Not all dreamers are visionaries. Some are simply escapists. People who avoid the discipline of now by hiding in the seduction of later. So how do you tell the difference? Watch the patterns. Does she follow through? Does she learn from failure? Or simply abandon it for a new idea? Does she speak more about what she wants or what she's doing? Are you building together? Or is she constantly rebuilding excuses? Ask yourself, are her dreams direction or distraction? The Stoics were deeply practical. They understood that a good life wasn't built in fantasy, but in consistent, aligned action. A dream, after all, is only sacred when it's carried into reality with courage. If she cannot commit to steps, to structure, to effort, then she is not building a future. She's avoiding the present. And you? You'll find yourself increasingly alone, not in body, but in burden. You'll become the sole architect, while she sketches endlessly on the walls of your effort. That's not love. That's imbalance. That's not vision. That's evasion. A true partner dreams, and then digs. They imagine, and then invest. They speak of the stars, yes, but they also plant in the soil. They know that building a life requires both inspiration and perspiration. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." And the same applies to love. Waste no more time explaining what a good partnership could be. Build one, with someone who's present, anchored, and ready to show up fully. So if you're with someone who lives in the clouds, but leaves you in the dust, step back. Not because she's unworthy, but because she's not ready. And no amount of hope can ground a person who refuses to land. You deserve a partner who not only believes in the dream, but walks with you toward it, on solid ground. Together. Number 7. The the spiritually bankrupt. At first, there's nothing obviously wrong. She's charming, witty, intelligent. Maybe she's well-read, knows how to talk about mindfulness, trauma, healing, even quotes philosophers when the mood fits. She might practice yoga, mention meditation, talk about growth and transformation. But if you look closely, something is missing. Not from her words, but from her presence. There's no moral center, no stillness, no genuine alignment between what she says and how she lives. You feel it, not always in what she does, but in what she lacks. Depth, humility, integrity, a sense of something greater than herself. She's what I call spiritually bankrupt. And this isn't about religion. It's not about belief systems or rituals. It's about anchoring, having an inner compass, a moral rhythm, a commitment to truth, not just when it's convenient, but when it's uncomfortable. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." The spiritually bankrupt person does the opposite. They speak endlessly of ideals, but embody none of them. They know the language of values, but not the labor. They are fluent in self-image, but silent when it comes to self-awareness. And the result? A relationship that feels like a play. Roles are performed. Emotions are rehearsed. But when real difficulty comes, when life presses in, there's no root, no grounding, no truth. You'll notice patterns. She'll say all the right things when she's in the spotlight, but in private, there's apathy. Her empathy is performative. Her apologies, empty. She doesn't grow through conflict. She escapes it. She doesn't reflect. She deflects. It's like trying to hold water in your hands. Slippery, shapeless, always leaving you with less than you thought you had. And if you are a grounded, values-driven man, this will quietly destroy you. Because you won't just feel alone, you'll start questioning your sense of what's real. I once knew a man named Leon. A spiritual man, not preachy, not perfect, but rooted. He meditated, served his community, walked through grief without hiding behind platitudes. When he met her, he thought he'd found a kindred spirit. She spoke of synchronicity, purpose, sacred partnerships. But over time, Leon noticed something strange. Her life was full of drama, endless conflict with friends, co-workers, family. And yet, in all her stories, she was never at fault. When he'd try to ground the conversation, she'd pivot. When he'd invite honest reflection, she'd evade. And any challenge to her narrative became negative energy. Leon didn't leave because she was bad. He left because she was hollow, not unintelligent, not heartless, just untethered. The spiritually bankrupt live without a lighthouse. They drift. They mimic depth, but avoid the work of integrity. And slowly, they pull you into their drift. The Stoics warned us about this. Epictetus said, "The key is to keep company only with people who uplift you, whose presence calls forth your best." The spiritually bankrupt do the opposite. They drain you, not with cruelty, but with emptiness. You find yourself trying to inspire them, stabilize them, teach them what it means to be centered. But you can't teach grounding to someone who refuses to stand still. You can't build with someone who treats values like fashion, wearing them when convenient, discarding them when tested. They'll lie, but call it preserving peace. They'll betray, but frame it as following their truth. They'll hurt, but insist it's your fault for being too sensitive. And over time, your clarity will dull. Your trust will fade. You'll begin to second-guess what you know in your bones. Because when someone lacks a moral compass, everything becomes negotiable. And that's the deepest danger of all. Not that she'll betray you, but that she'll betray herself and not even notice. Seneca wrote, "No man was ever wise by chance." Wisdom, like love, requires intentionality. It demands alignment between words and actions, between who you claim to be and how you show up when it matters. So how do you protect yourself? By watching, not what she says, but how she lives. Does she show humility? Or is every conversation a performance? Does she repair when she hurts you? Or does she rationalize it away? Does she have a foundation, something sacred she stands on? Or is everything relative, fluid, reactive? And perhaps most importantly, does her presence make you feel more grounded or more adrift? If it's the latter, listen. Because no matter how beautiful, how spiritual, how captivating someone appears, if they lack a center, they will take you off yours. And your soul is too precious to be lost in someone else's chaos. You are not here to save, to fix. to stabilize someone else's identity. You are here to build, to love, to evolve with someone who holds herself to the same standard she speaks of. And if that's not who she is, walk, not in bitterness, but in clarity, because you deserve a love that's not just poetic, but principled, not just beautiful, but true. So here we are, standing at the edge of 7 truths that most hearts learn the hard way. Each of these people, the chronic victim, the manipulative charmer, the emotionally unavailable, the eternal critic, the resentful competitor, the unanchored dreamer, and the spiritually bankrupt, do not wear signs. They don't arrive with warning labels. They arrive as stories, as needs, as light, and as mirrors. And that's what makes them so dangerous. Because in the beginning, they often reflect what you long for most: connection, beauty, depth, intimacy. But over time, that reflection begins to distort you. Not suddenly, slowly, not violently, subtly, until you find yourself in a relationship where you are no longer growing, no longer seen, no longer at peace. And peace, my friend, that is the measure. Not perfection, not fireworks, not even happiness. Peace, Marcus Aurelius wrote, the tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say or think or do, only what you do. And in love, that translates to this: clarity over chemistry, truth over tension, substance over seduction. This isn't about blaming women or men. It's about recognizing what breaks your spirit, what dims your light, what turns love into labor that bears no fruit. You are not here to fix someone else's wounds while bleeding quietly. You are not here to shrink so someone else can feel large. You are not here to carry a relationship alone. You are here to choose wisely, to see clearly, to love with open eyes, not closed fists. And when it's time, to walk away, not with resentment, but with reverence, for what you learned, for who you became, for the strength it takes to leave when every part of you still wants to stay. Because clarity is love in its most courageous form. So as you move forward, ask yourself, not just who do I love, but who makes me feel at home in my soul? Because love should not confuse you. It should not exhaust you. It should not feel like a puzzle you were never meant to solve. Love, real love, feels like alignment, like inner stillness, like a mirror that reflects not your wounds, but your worth. And if this video brought you clarity, even a drop of it, honor that. Let it move something in you. Let it challenge what you've tolerated. Let it soften what's hardened. And if it helped, I invite you, gently, from the heart, to like this video. Subscribe to Stoic Now. Share your story in the comments. Not to impress anyone, but to remind yourself, your voice matters. Your journey is worthy, and your healing is not just possible, it's already in motion. We walk this path together every week. Slowly, stoically, truthfully. And if today felt like a step, then we're already on the way. Until next time, guard your peace. And remember, better to walk alone in truth than be loved in illusion.